And hello once again. Today we will discuss an important subject matter, which is a regulation of generative AI. In recent months, the discussion around the draft law on the fundamentals of AI regulation has intensified in Russia. This is one of the most debated draft laws over recent years. There are so many different perspectives on the topic and how it should be defined in legal terms. Besides, we are approaching a frontier and we don't know the answer to the question of how artificial intelligence should be regulated. We study international experience. And there are certain models that seem to be crystallizing, but we don't know yet which of these models will prove to be optimal. We don't know how the model will impact the long-term development of the technology and its impact on public relations, the economy, and the world in general. We envisaged this session before the draft law was introduced to the parliament last year together with my colleagues from Technologies of Trust. We studied international experience, we researched existing models, trying to decide which path Russia should follow in its regulation of Gen AI. I have here next to me Anastasia Kabaeva, partner of Technologies of Trust, Anna Malinovskaya from Rostelecom, Damir Sarikhov from Yandex, Evgeny Osachuk from Skolkovo. Evgeny used to be a colleague of mine, but now he works at Skolkovo. That sounds a bit weird. And for a long time, he headed the National Working Group on Artificial Intelligence Regulation. And Marat Takhaiev, head of GR project at the Big Data Association. First, I would like to hear from our panelists what they generally think about this matter. Let's start with Anastasia, Technologies of Trust. Now, what was the work done and what are the findings? Yes, thank you very much. I don't want to go into the report itself because you can read it for yourselves and the conclusions there speak for themselves. I would like to share my personal perspective on this narrative. A disclaimer, I'm definitely not a compliance officer, and I do apologize in advance if I'm going to offend someone's feelings. I'm a bit cautious about all kinds of regulations, especially when it comes to regulating new technologies, and I have a limited technological experience. I'm here representing investors, let's put it this way, or even users, people who are interested in the growth of the market. They want the market to grow as fast as possible. And the Gen AI is to be efficient and be environmentally friendly in its implementation. I decided to use the old technique of information collection. When preparing for the session, I decided to walk in the lobby of our office and talk, to the passers-by, to the experts. I decided to first find out their opinion. In fact, we can basically boil down all the answers to the following. To go back to our report, to our research, the main insight is that 70% of the jurisdictions that we reviewed follow the path of soft regulation. And when I say soft regulation, mainly that means self-regulation, regulation at the level of institutions, industries, professional communities. Uh, Moreover, many countries that opted in favor of hard regulation, namely European Union and China, actually already thinking to soften some of their approaches, some of their provisions. Why? Why is this happening? It's clear the harder direction, the higher entry barriers to the market, the higher the cost of the companies, the human resources will be able to find employment in that industry. A few products will have. There are colleagues who are totally against any regulation, and basically what they are saying is that if we talk about some prohibited contents, there are other provisions in the laws that are called to regulate. It doesn't matter if the origin of this content lies in artificial intelligence or quite natural intelligence. Basically, there are already provisions in the law that protect the population in terms of banking compliance, in terms of civil and criminal codes from undesirable content and the likes. I think this is an important concept. There is another idea that I want to highlight. I'm totally in favor of soft regulation, but in this context, soft regulation to me is not about setting limits or restrictions, it's about trust. From the point of view of an investor, hard regulation is bad because it increases the entry barrier. No regulation is bad because it's not clear what's going to happen to the industry in the future. This lowers trust, lowers risk appetite. Investors are not willing to invest into a technology if investors do not believe in their sustainability over the long run. But regulation is, or soft regulation ensures sustainability of the technology for the investor and for the users in the short and mid run. So the main message, my speech here is I'm in favor of soft regulation, high trust of the technologies for the experts to speak openly, to make this world more safe, to protect the world from the risks generated by Gen AI. This is how we can produce most benefit. Thank you. Damir, it's working, should be working. Yes, Damir prepared a quick presentation, a short stack of slides. Can I have the slides on the screen, please? Can we have the slides on the screen? This one, half a presentation. Doesn't matter. Well, actually, I'll start with a spoiler. We also analyzed the experience of the jurisdictions where we have a presence. Digital economies and technologies trust research actually matches our own findings over the past several years. So I wanted to discuss the trends and regulation of artificial intelligence globally. Korean was right in saying that one way or another, the world is moving towards regulation. The question is, what kind of regulation and how to ensure benefits from AI while minimizing AI-related risks. So for starters, what are we regulating? What to regulate? The premise is that the governments believe in technological neutrality. Very weird to regulate one particular technology. Ad absurdum, that would be like regulating the use of knives for particular purposes. That sounds paradoxical, but it turns out that artificial intelligence is the object of a heightened interest of both eyes of regulators and of the society. Why? Because AI has certain salient features. They are listed on the slide. And probably the main feature of AI is its probabilistic nature. And the discussion around regulation actually centers on one key question. there is no 100% guarantee of the result produced by AI because of the nature of this technology. Technology will develop in big strides. It will always be 99%, but there will be this tiny percentage of those errors, those mistakes. Gen AI's certain risk types multiply again because of the special characteristics of this technology. And yes, technology develops very fast. At first, AI was all about um, predicting the word and the high, predicting the frequency with which words are being used. But now we've got new technologies, rock, working with sources, etc., etc. But you have to understand all of this in the context of regulation. And the question is, what are we regulating? Are we regulating artificial intelligence or generative artificial intelligence? Because in reality, many countries follow the track of AI regulation and Russian laws. Actually, we see the same trends. So basically, AI. Well, Russia regulates AI in general. Anastasia is right when she's asking how can we ensure the development of AI while safeguarding ourselves from risks. And we agree that regulation should be minimal, and wherever it's not required, it should not be implemented or enforced. We should deal with only with the risks that exist in reality. Generally, the world progresses towards comprehensive regulation. The AI Act is an excellent case confirming that, and the Chinese experience also fits that pattern. But most countries tend to adopt specific amendments to specific pieces of legislation, like changing or adding an article or two in the civil code, for instance. So most of the countries um, go along that way. Now let's start with the European Union experience. AI Act was approved in May 2024. It was coming into effect gradually. Italy last year adopted an act which is much more stringent than the original AI Act. Most of the developers, major developers in the world, refused to deal with Europe, which is now a surprise. The regulation is too tough. The European regulators realized that they did something wrong, and now they are discussing the possibility of retreating their footsteps and going backwards a little bit. And the idea is, okay, let's create AI with a human face and protect all the rights of the citizens. Well, actually, this resulted in unclear rules of the game. All these beautiful ideas of risk-oriented approach and the European experience in practice turns out to be something quite different. In most cases, the developers don't know which category of risks their solutions fit because the regulation itself is so vague, and the multi-page explanations from the regulator do not shed any light on the question at hand. And this creates additional risks, obviously. So the European Union demonstrated everyone how things should not be done, and it looks like the Russian regulator agrees that's not for us. But they created a lot of jobs. Yes, exactly. 400-page long clarifications. They are creating a lot of jobs. That's true. That's true. Another approach, a different logic, the American logic, which is pro-development. Minimal regulation, no regulation, that's the pathway. And Anastasia said that absence of regulation leads to a vacuum. We don't have answers to certain questions, what to do. So on the one hand, they have court practice, and they also have pinpoint amendments to the laws. There was this populist step when Donald Trump, on the first day of his presidency, he said, okay, let's stop the states from regulating AI at the state level. Well, again, as soon as this initiative died, but at least an attempt was made, and the regulation is advancing very fast in the area of unmanned vehicles. Unmanned vehicles, well, those vehicles will be driving not where they are built, but where they are allowed to drive. And this is very important. Self-regulation in the US has corporate nature. Basically, regulation applies to specific corporation. Every corporation would have its own methodology and ethics for dealings with AI. There is some collaboration between the majors, but mostly each self-regulatory document reflects the policy of one particular company. Netflix has its own policy, for instance, AI policy. Yeah, of course, all these countries have their own special features, but we put all the slides on all of these countries on the same slide because they belong to the same region. If you read Japanese laws on AI, you'd be surprised. It's something new. AI in those laws is named a fuel for economy development. Well, it's the same as in the US. No, no, no. The idea of Japanese regulation is okay, let's develop artificial intelligence, let's help them by doing this, this, and that. And let's set up coordination bodies and support measures and all of that. Japan is somewhat radical. If you look at intelligence data analysis, like yeah, Japan says that if the databases are hacked, it's okay if this is done for training purposes. Well, this is quite a revolutionary approach, and it raises many questions. South Korea, Singapore, they basically are on the same track as Japan. The idea is to set up framework incentivizing regulation to facilitate the implementation of AI-based solutions. These jurisdictions can take into account those who implement artificial intelligence, an important stakeholder, because in this discussion, it looks like we've got the developer, we've got the user, but we are missing an important link. And that important link is really crucial in terms of regulatory measures that support the development of AI. We can refer to the data mining, the regulation that offers access to all available content around the internet for training purposes, free training purposes. It's an important provision, and the draft national law in Russia also contains such a provision. We don't know what's going to happen to this provision, draft provision. No, we don't. Kazakhstan recently adopted the law. It came into effect in January 2026. And next, they also adopted the digital code. Kazakhstan started developing AI regulation from point zero, saying that we want to have the same regulation as in Europe, but at the time when this document reached the parliament and the president, they managed to strike a balance and they prioritized innovation over conservatism and protectionism. And now Kazakhstan is creating favorable conditions for the operations of international companies, including big ones like Telegram, for instance. Probably you heard that they have they are thinking about big joint projects with Telegram. Yandex is also very active in Kazakhstan, and it's a comfortable jurisdiction for AI development. There are certain issues there. We don't know how to um, comply with certain content-related provisions, and probably in the future, those provisions will have to be either amended or removed altogether. So anyway, this law defines the status of different stakeholders, and now Kazakhstan has a predictable model for regulation of AI. Global trends are such that those jurisdictions that adopt framework regulation, which is quite predictable and incentivizing, are the winners. Of course, enforceability is important. Labeling, that's a good case study. There were a lot of discussions in the world around pre-motivation. Let's have pre-moderated content. But right now, there is no expert methodology that would guarantee the findings of this check. It doesn't exist. We don't have the methodologies. And what norm setting regulation needs is terminology. First and foremost, there are a lot of discussions around what is AI, how to define Gen AI, etc. So definitions is perhaps one of the most difficult and um, invisible discussions that we are having right now. And these are our findings in conjunction with what technologies of trust did in their review based on this inductive analysis. So colleagues proceeded along the deductive approach, and ours is inductive. Most jurisdictions have framework regulation. There is a steady trend, at least in the political discussions, wherever there are harsh measures already at work. These measures need to be adjusted because they are prone with a negative impact. As lawyers, well, we are in favor of regulation, but if regulation hinders the development, because we know that regulation can hinder substantially the development of technology.
A number of European countries are centers of excellence as far as machine learning is concerned. You can take a look at their publications and so on and so forth, but they don't have their own large-scale development because no one is ready to comply with these laws and bylaws. I recently talked to small-scale developers, well, basically startups in Europe who try to launch things in Europe, and I asked them, how are you going to comply with AI Act? And they said, well, let's launch the product, then sell the company, and that's going to be their headache. Well, at least that was an honest answer because this is really so. And overall, the trend is to find a balance. As for the Russian specifics, we have to take into account the trust towards AI and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, foreign experience is still useful, and it seems to me that it needs additional testing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Damir. Anna, the floor is all yours. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and experts in the discussion. Thank you so much, Damir, for deep diving us into the lawmaking domain and sharing some international experience with us. Well, I'd like to touch upon, as was previously mentioned, on the symbiosis of soft and hard regulation. And I wanted to remind everyone about the soft law. Well, initially, Russia embraced this very approach because back in 2021, the AI Alliance adopted the code of ethics for AI, and over 1,000 Russian companies are actually signatories to the AI code of ethics. It's an example of self-regulation. Every large-scale company or developer becomes a signatory to this code, and it deep dives into the issues and challenges pertaining to human rights protection, user rights protection, and stuff like that. And as far as soft law is concerned and regulation is concerned, we need to make, we cannot but mention educating people and training people. And this is what AI Alliance and the Digital Economy NPO focus on. They run joint projects and they publish joint analytical reports. As was previously mentioned by the panelists, an upcoming bill is being actively discussed. It's gonna be hard regulation because the framework is gonna be tougher. As for the international regulation experience and going back to the soft law, I'd like to go back to communications between the states because we primarily right now we talked about the domestic regulation. However, high-tech products require collaboration between different states, and I just want to mention that as part of the EAEU, the Russian relevant executive bodies and the Ministry of Digital Development develop a paper on AI in the EAU, and in late May in Kazakhstan, the EAU member states are expected to sign this declaration. I believe that joint papers like that are important for the international community because many aspects are being taken into account. For instance, Rostelecom has taken part in developing similar papers. Our views are taken into account. Therefore, the main task of evolution of the regulation across the world on generative AI, since it's the generative AI that impacts every single human, and I'm talking about developers, users, and those who roll out these technologies, uh, we need to be clear on why the government pays so much attention to regulation. If you become a signatory to the code of ethics, if you become a signatory to the declaration, you should be aware of the significance and importance of the tougher legal framework. That will give you more appetite for various laws and bylaws. All the NPOs, nonprofit organizations who advocate ethical issues, I'd like to thank you for that. Evgeny, well, who represents small-time developers? Exactly, I represent small-time developers. Because Skolkovo hosts startups. So going back to what Damir mentioned, there is a startup who wants to sell the company to a big company, and then it will become the headache of a big company to comply with the local laws. It's not really so all the time, because an investor, when he buys a startup, pays due attention to the compliance of a startup to the local legal framework. And if the technology or if the product of a startup does not comply with the applicable laws, an investor might refuse to buy the startup. So it might not be a good strategy. But going back to the title of the session, as was mentioned previously, globalization is now being reversed, and the world is now becoming a multipolar one. That that is the precondition for the technological sovereignty and sovereignty in the AI domain, because AI as technology will predetermine our future for the next decade at the very least. Many governments want to invest huge money into computing power. They want to develop in and generate enough energy to power these computing centers. Many governments create conditions to offset the costs of those who roll out AI-based solutions. Many governments toughen up the rules pertaining to data processing. They develop their own data processing strategies and AI strategies. In other words, it's a global trend about establishing high-tech sovereignty to combat the ongoing challenges. The federal bill on AI regulation coins the term of technological independence. Ultimately, we're going to get a legally binding definition. And the goal of the upcoming federal law, which is actively being discussed by the civil society and the businesses, is creating the legal conditions for advanced development of artificial intelligence. Well, we've been using expressions like sovereignty and technological sovereignty, but how do we facilitate it? First and foremost, we would need sovereign and national AI models. So the next question we face is, what kind of data are we gonna feed into these AI models to teach them and for them to still be sovereign? And the bill says traditional Russian spiritual values should be don't laugh at that. This is what the bill says. So the AI models should be saturated with the Russian spiritual values and bonds. So how does the technological sovereignty reflect on us? It's it's up to Russia to decide on the responsibilities of all the AI players, including developers, uh, service providers, and owners. It's Russia that delineates the areas of responsibility of all the actors. And it's Russia that defines what content will be considered to be AI generated and who has the copyrights. The answers to these questions will shape the national technological sovereignty. So it's my understanding that the issues we came here to discuss about regulation will be reflected in the federal law on AI regulation looking forward. And I really hope that our views will be used to shape the very definition of technological sovereignty and the AI sovereignty. I believe that the most important question pertaining to AI regulation and generative AI regulation boils down to the following. What's best for us? Is it a sovereign solution with underdeveloped performance, or is it a foreign-made solution with the highest performance? I really hope that we ultimately would have a sovereign and a high-performing solution. Thank you, Marat. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, you raised a very important issue when you talked about the availability of data to teach national AI models. Well, we could embrace the following approach. We can shut down everything. We can ban data transfer altogether, create data lakes, and these data lakes will soon become data swamps. The Big Data Association has been dealing with improving the data availability for the market in general for a long time. And as for the AI aspect, I believe there are two relevant issues. On the one hand, as far as the generative AI is concerned, we can increase data availability by using specific models that can generate data based on real data without disclosing sensitive information or ownership of a private individual. And the second aspect is employing AI to process real world data, sanitizing such data, and transforming data into a data set that would, on the one hand, be useful for analytics, training other neural networks and AI models, but on the other hand, it will ensure personal data protection for private individuals. So going back to the former, generating synthetic data sets. Where we strongly advocate soft law and soft regulation in this regard. A technical committee on AI has already developed and approved draft national standard on generating synthetic data sets. It will soon be published. And this standard offers a methodology for creating high quality and safe data sets. We believe that this methodology, if used by the developers of the AI models, will ensure processing of sanitized data rather than sensitive data, which means that you will not be able to link real data with a real person. On the one hand, it will increase data availability for training models, for testing various solutions, and for testing hypotheses. And on the other hand, it will prevent the use of personal data. And then a trained model can use real data sets in various socially significant domains, such as anti-fraud efforts. That's the first work stream. The second work stream is about using AI to ensure safety. We have developed a risk model, and by the way, back in 2024, we already described this model at the Russian Internet Governance Forum. Jointly with the market players, we discussed using GPT models to sanitize unstructured data sets. So let's say CVs, curriculum vitae, or advertisement boards would be a good example, because they contain much personal data. For instance, you get your last name, first name, and you can delete such sensitive data. However, and you can camouflage the phone number. But if a user openly shares his personal information on his or her career or services provided by him or her, even if you remove direct identifiers, such personal information can still be used to identify this person. And the AI, if you feed such text to the AI model, can process the text and remove information then that can identify the person. For instance, in his CV, data on previous jobs can be removed. So it's about sanitizing data sets. The name of a specific company would be replaced with the name of the industry, and so on and so forth. And well, the results demonstrated that such models can sanitize and protect sensitive data on the one hand, and the final result, nevertheless, was still useful for training other AI models, or such data could be transferred to outside developers or testing in-house solutions. So these are new opportunities in store for us. I don't think that tough legal frameworks should cover such operations. We should probably focus on improving market approved practices and methodologies, especially if they live up to our expectations. And some of the practices might become part of the self-regulation effort. For instance, a code of ethics has already been mentioned, so we could develop a code of ethics for using AI or data sets. Right, let's move on to the first round of questions to our panelists. I'll try to provoke you. Don't you think that advanced model developers contradict our thesis, well, a statement that the regulation should be balanced? Let me give you several examples. Sam Altman has several times in the past few months stated that AI is gonna replace all the white collars, massive unemployment, and so on and so forth. And his counterparts make similar statements all the time. And they say that AGI is something that we can expect in the near future. And Dronix today stated that they developed the Mythos model, but it's not going to be public because it finds vulnerabilities in public products so well that if they publish it, if they go public with it, it will result in catastrophic consequences for the critical information infrastructure across the world. So he is actually creating a cybersecurity alliance. As of spring 2026, well, we might realize that the EU was in too much haste when it's published the AI Act, because back then they didn't know what they want to regulate. But when the developers say one thing, and for instance, and Bernie Sanders in the US calls on everyone to ban construction of data centers and stop the development of the technology altogether, don't you think that under regulation is still a risk, or do you think we need to do something? Any volunteers? Anastasia, go ahead. Well, your question already contains the answer to it. I love it. As for my personal attitude, I usually read a book, and it has a huge impact on my recent views. And the most recent book I read was about development of a nuclear bomb, and American Prometheus. The movie was shot based on this book. Uh, you can hypothesize about the dangers of the technology you're inventing. And even if you are a super expert, if you are the only expert in the world, you can still only approximately suspect what the dangers are, but you don't know who is going to use the technology, how adequately it's going to be used, whether it's going to be used for the benefit of the humankind or for the opposite purposes. And what do we mean by the good and the evil? All these philosophical and legal issues require, no matter how painful for us, verification in practice. So I personally don't think that we are moving in the wrong direction when we try to introduce self-regulation. I believe that self-regulation is a better approach because all the market actors, that includes developers, executors, and users, to be more conscious towards the technology, because tough regulation lifts the responsibility from the people, because people will start thinking there are smarter people who know better than me, and there are no such people, because no one knows what the fallout will be. We know that the labor market is going to be changed, but we don't know how much. We know that the approaches to education will change, but we don't know how significantly. We know that new opportunities are created for mediocre people, but we don't know whether people will use this technology for the benefit of the humankind or to harm it. So when you don't know something, it's really uncomfortable to make a decision. But this is what life is all about throughout the history of the humankind. Let me follow up on that. Well, the experience of our company shows the following. We recently launched a product for lawyers, and we carried out lots of in-depth interviews with legal firms to better understand what their demands are. And indeed, the legal profession will be transformed by the AI. AI minimizes routine tasks, but it frees up your time to focus on more complex legal tasks. And this is going to be true for many industries and many domains. And don't forget about the fact that certain US corporations abuse this thing, because if you want to make a beautiful report to investors, you can say we can automate 50% of the industry, but this is just not true. And you have to be clear on the fact that there are various things that can be automated and streamlined, and some of the professions will be transformed. Well, going back to the various industrial revolutions, certain jobs did disappear, but do not dramatize it too much. There are researchers saying that we won't see any drastic changes. Indeed, there will be a transformation, but it's not going to lead to systemic problems. Secondly, we have to keep in mind that artificial intelligence is just a tool. It's just one of many tools in a toolbox. I'm simplifying that, but let me give you the following example. You can use a knife to cut the bread, and you can also use the knife to stab someone to death. And well, Anastasia just mentioned a nuclear bomb. You cannot use a nuclear bomb to cut bread, but peaceful atom, peaceful nuclear energy is still useful. It's about risks and risks management, adequate risks management. And the third thing I wanted to mention is that we have to realize that AI is a technology that generates up to 3% of GDP. What's going to happen looking forward? I don't know. I don't rule out that this share will either stagnate or will go down. Well, at the early start of the engineering industry, imagine London, the UK, lots of horses in the streets, and then all of a sudden, internal combustion engines were installed in, or steam engines. Steam engines were appeared in the street, and there were lots of smoke, and the authorities came up with standalone people who would be running in front of the cars with red flags to warn of the danger. And that slowed down the progress. So we can hardly identify direct correlations between the laws and the consequences. But this just goes to show you there are lots of examples about IT technologies that have yet to be regulated, and it's an advantage. It's not a shortfall. It seems to me that we need to combat real risks rather than try and bend something ethereal. Thank you so much. Karen, I just wanted to mention, going back to some of your bullets, banning data centers is like banning electricity and telling everyone to keep on using steam engines. I think that would have slowed down the technological progress even more. It doesn't happen that way. High-tech companies use the most effective tools available to them out there in the market. As far as the AI technology is concerned, you have to keep in mind, and Rostelecom emphasizes this all the time. We put a human in as a cornerstone. So it's going to be a human enabled by AI. Replacing white collars with AI is something we don't believe in. We use AI-based technologies. For instance, we have a neural gate, an NI-based solution used on a daily basis to minimize the time spent on routine tasks. Therefore, if people are unwilling to use such technologies, they will not be competitive in the market in the future. So basically, every employee will probably use AI assistance looking forward. And our AI development strategy reads that by 2030, every single employee of our company will use AI assistance on a daily basis as a tool, as was mentioned by Damir. Some routine tasks will take just half an hour, while in the past you would spend 3 hours on fulfilling them. And using certain tools allows you to get a competitive edge for a short period of time. For instance, companies that actively use AI technologies are more competitive, but in the future, it will determine your survival, because those companies who will not use AI technologies will be driven out of the market. The same thing as if you would not if you- if you would if you had refused to use internet a decade ago. So you have to keep this in mind. Thank you. Well, I would support your opening remarks. There is a view which is typical for Western researchers, saying that all these limitations and self-regulation efforts are violated by the big tech companies. These voluntary restrictions are designed for the benefit of big tech companies. Self-regulation is good at the initial stage of AI development, but when you already gained some law enforcement experience, the measures should become tougher. I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about the Western experience. How acceptable it's going to be for the Russian companies? How will Russian companies comply with ethical standards designed by Western companies? Will they integrate them into their operations? That's a big question mark. Only the future will show. And if they don't do that, of course, the regulation is going to get tougher. Thank you.
Well, I would like to disagree with Yevgeny. Take data that's used for training of artificial intelligence. I think that companies, regardless of a regulation or self-regulation, are interested in protecting their customers' data duly for them. Otherwise, it would involve reputational risks if they take a model, train it with the customer's data, and then the model will go online, and then this model will start sharing sensitive data of the customers of that company. The company will suffer major risks. And what Damir has already said, a risk-oriented approach may be the right platform. And we understand that some areas require more attention, other areas require perhaps a more balanced approach. And generally speaking, the people's attitude, it's not, everything is not very clear. Recently, we conducted a survey on what people think about their personal medical data being used for training of AI, and the majority of people, more than 80% of our respondents, actually said that they would be willing to share their personal medical data to train the models. They were less interested in the commercial component, that is to say, whether they will be paid or not paid for sharing the data, but they were concerned about the social impact. They were, you know, driven by the fact that the models will use the data to to be trained to treat certain diseases. So I think that this can be a major use case. Well, actually, in the field of healthcare, this is a different angle. It's like in healthcare, we understand the benefit for ourselves, for the society better. I mean, it's visible, more pronounced in the state-of-the-art technologies. We believe that we will win by having high quality medical care if we help this technology to develop. It doesn't apply to all technologies and to all fields of human existence. In radiology, the implementation of AI started with the interpretation of scans, interpretation of images, and the demand for radiologists actually went up. It didn't decline because now the there is more there is more demand for radiologists, and they do increase the standard of healthcare together with AI. So this is important. I'm not sure if the same effect can be achieved through regulation. Another question to the panelists. Damir remarked upon framework or not framework measures. In the international arena, there are certain areas that are covered by the AI regulation, and this data include data for AI, copyright of AI, risk-oriented models, in most cases, labeling, despite our position still labeling, industrial applications like unmanned vehicles, self-driven cars, healthcare, and what else? Well, actually, uh, from your point of view, what should be the structure of a law on artificial intelligence? What should be part of the framework of legislation? What should be included into the law proper? And the Ministry of Digital Development doesn't know the answer. They say in the draft law that an AI model is not software. Maybe we should ask artificial intelligence to prepare a draft law. Probably this question should better be referred to lawyers, frankly speaking. I am a practitioner myself. Yeah, I'm very much practice centric. I think every law has several key components. There is the introduction, there is the conclusion, but the law should also contain a clear definition of its area of governance, of its area of regulation. And then we need to understand, are we regulating AI, non-AI, spreadsheet, not spreadsheet, model, non-model? We need to understand the object of a regulation. We also need to understand the agent, the subject. What are we protecting? From what we are protecting? Who we are protecting? And what are the consequences if certain provisions, legal provisions, are breached? Execution or enforcement are also very important in Russia. Well, I'll start from a different premise. I don't think that we need to understand what the structure should be of a particular law. Instead, what we need to understand what uh, is subject to regulation in general. Laws that are archaic, very old laws that were uh, written and adopted without AI and in the times when there was no internet, but courts can set the practice straight. There was a case assumed by courts related to copyright to a deepfake, and the courts resolved that case. In civil legislation, well, in general, Russian regulation is quite traditionalistic and it's a bit outdated compared to where development is at the moment. It's not very clear how software regulation matches big models, for instance, because this or LLM, like an LLM includes weights. What kind of object is that? It's not defined in the law, actually. So what should go into the law? The big question is, are we selling or are we buying? Or rather, what is your objective? Anastasia, it's something that you talked about. Uh, why are we regulating something? What for? What's the purpose? As soon as we understand the purpose, we know how to regulate. So in practice, definitions are important. What are we doing? Where are we running to? But it is really critical to have the definitions and regulation. But if we have regulation, then we can't avoid definitions. The status of stakeholders, their rights and duties, that's also very important. Can't do without it. Indispensable. Other issues that emerge all the time. Accountability, who's responsible for what? Another big set of questions is the nature of the internet and the large suite of international foreign-made solutions, products. Trusted artificial intelligence, that's another big discussion. What do we want it to be? Is the industry ready? What does the government want? Even regulators preach different approaches to this entity, and that seems to be important too. So, to answer the question about the purpose, we need to organize a broad expert discussion. The national strategy in the field of AI that does not and can't contain answers to all these questions, which is quite natural. The digital economy program at the very start, what they did is they identified barriers and removed them. Another approach is to assess risks and mitigate risks via legislation or by taking other measures. There are options, there are different ways. First of all, we need to understand what is the problem that we are tackling and what we want to do with it. And only after that, we'll decide how to regulate it. Well, Karen, I will too refrain from describing the structure of a law. We have already spent many hours on discussions and drafting the law. Many people are contributing to this draft law, and the longer we work on it, the more nuances are revealed. And well, first of all, I think that we need to have a baseline law on AI regulation. We are in favor of that. It's important to take into account the opinion of all stakeholders in the process, including business. It is already happening, and I would like to thank the Digital Economy Organization and all colleagues who are drafting the law and who are the voice of the business in the dialogue with the government and the parliament. Now, this is a difficult question. Let me highlight just one aspect. There are different industries in the economy, and then there is the social sphere. So we regulate artificial intelligence as it is applied in industries of the economy. Here's the set of the industries and in the social spheres. What are the options for the architecture of the law? A law can be horizontal. We are drafting a law to regulate the whole totality of the industries of the economy. We can't do it because the industries are too diverse and the law will be too long, too broad, will create a monster, will not be able to control in the future. Or we can let relevant ministries and departments to regulate AI as they see fit, as applied to their areas of responsibility. Probably we will limit the development of AI that can serve several industries at once by taking this approach. To me, the most adaptive approach is as follows. The architecture of the law can be two-tier. The first tier is horizontal. It contains the basic requirements to the AI models, transparency, systemic risks, identification, etc. And the second tier is the industry tier. And every industry, starting from those basic premises, will regulate itself. Systemic risks will be governed by the model tier, and we will cover industrial risks by the second tier. Probably it's not the perfect architecture, but perhaps it's the one that we need. And the draft law of the Ministry of Digital Development has a reference to the fact that every industry, every regulator has the right to amend the law, to expand the law based on the initial framework. Well, in terms of what should go into the law, I think that data accessibility should be definitely covered. One of the potential solutions there is to have trusted industrial intermediaries. They could accumulate competencies on safe assembly of data sets for training. They could understand all the special features of the data associated with finance or banking or heavy machinery, etc. And then we will have high quality and safe data sets to train our models on. This regulation would have had a positive impact on the development of AI. May I add something else? Well, I'm responsible for this, and I'm also responsible for medical technologies. Obviously, in pharmaceutical industry and healthcare, AI is expected to deliver uh, a, an enormous effect. And I attended a conference on biotech. And biotech, as you know, is our future. AI is 3% of the GDP, and biotech until 2050 is supposed to produce a 50% share of revenue to the government budget. And just like you, Karen, next to me here at this conference there, I was sharing the stage with Irina Panarina. She's the country lead of AstraZeneca in Russia, and all her talk was on the data accessibility. There were questions she received. She to data accessibility, data accessibility, data accessibility. And she was saying that she has just been to the United States at an AstraZeneca summit, and they have met there with a medical startup that doesn't have anyone with medical background. You know, they only have data scientists who process medical data, and it's data scientists who decide what kind of treatment is appropriate for which patient. It's not about accessible data really that I wanted to comment on, but in the pharmaceutical industry, in healthcare, and many other industries, there is something else that's relevant, like the mechanism of piloting different innovations and AI and data accessibility. You know, there was the analysis of routine clinical practices pilot project that failed. Well, there are many projects that failed. Data-related projects, especially. Yes, exactly. Well, it's a big question mark. Data for different industries, different spheres, and AI, data for AI. we were probably the first to launch driverless vehicles, but yeah, we expect still this industry to grow very much. And again, it's not about an industry-centric law, but I think those laws should provide for maximum opportunities to pilot test different technologies. This got me thinking that we have at least two positive experiences in regulation. It's the experimental regime for the driverless vehicles and the Moscow uh, project, the Moscow regime. Well, my question is, considering the explosive growth of the technology and uh, the timeline, which is not very clear at the moment, do you think it's possible at all that all regulation can be built around the idea or the concept of experimental regimes till the growth stops being explosive and becomes regular growth? So the question is, can we expand the application of experimental regimes? Yeah, I guess. Well, yes, I would support this approach in general, because right now we have industries at different levels of digital maturity. We know that some companies are leaders both in big data and in artificial intelligence that have the competencies. Karen, you said, what did you say? Cutting edge, cutting what? Events horizon. Well, regulation is a more conservative tool to find public consensus on a sensitive issue is often challenging. To have a universal tool that would promote technology in a restricted setting, well, probably could be useful. The question is, Damir, to you, why driverless vehicles have become a breakthrough technology that found support of the government, while data, like medical data, we are not seeing a breakthrough of the same kind or the same magnitude? Okay, can I spoil the logic of this discussion once you respond to this question? In fact, experimental legal regimes, ELRs, are the result of the dialogue with authorized regulators and their willingness to embark on experiments. Any experimental regime is a risk. Obviously, our life is a risk. Sometimes risks are high, sometimes lower, but experimental regimes, legal regimes, that's an innovation, and we've got this technology which is also an innovation and it's prone with risks, and there is a risk appetite of regulator which matters, and the regulators are conservative in terms of risks. The fact that experimental legal regimes, we should thank the Ministry of Economic Development and all other stakeholders for bringing them to life, for implementing them, because this requires a lot of hard work. And to answer, Karen's, your question, experimental legal regimes is not exactly the regulation we need, because they focus on a rather limited number of stakeholders. When we talk about regulation, proper regulation, we talk about an undefined number of people. Um, and when those experimental regimes were extended to public roads. But the main idea of the experimental regime is to let driverless vehicles on public roads, because otherwise the experiment would not make any sense. So the question of regulation, this general regulation, special regulation, is a big question mark as to the statistics of experimental regime. It's very difficult to switch from special to general regulation as part of this procedure. This is due to bureaucratic processes and the complexity of decision making and adopting various documents. Regulators, the Ministry of Transport in Russia is promoting the law on highly automated vehicles, and this is how these driverless vehicles are called in legal terms and legal documents. So general regulation obviously uh, means that the risks are controlled, they are not too high. Experimental regimes are a valuable tool, and it looks like the industry and the government is not using the potential of this tool to the full, especially in some sensitive areas. Karen, to go back to the question of experimental legal regimes can be extended to all industries, to all technologies. Well, probably not, but to test certain hypotheses, as Damir was saying, it's a good tool because without practical applications, we'll not be able to see any certain nuances. Those driverless vehicles were tested on the road when in some areas of Moscow, I mean, we can test a driverless taxi in Annapolis. Those driverless taxis are also available. It can be tested, so it's good practice that is now finding way into general legislation. I think it's a good and a healthy idea to have experimental legal regimes as part of a general law. I agree with Damir and colleagues. As far as I understand, experimental legal regime is an exception to the current rules, and we are saying that we don't yet have current rules. We don't have those current rules. An exception of what? An exemption. Well, actually, we already considering draft law that would extend the experimental legal regimes to new areas that are not yet regulated. Thank you. And one last big question to all of you, colleagues. However you look at it, there are two countries where the market of solutions and the solutions, the AI-based solutions are developing the fastest, the United States and China. And these two jurisdictions preach few opposing approaches to regulations. Question is, regulatory framework, how important it is for the development of the market, or the technology has such a tremendous potential in it that is very difficult to contain. You can't contain it by any regulation. You can't expect that all developers will follow the written laws. So what's the question? Do we need regulation? There is China, there is the US, same results, different approaches. Does regulation matter? Well, regulation can't be alienated from other cultural norms or the culture codes, and of course that's not highlighted anywhere in the report, but we know why the US follows that track, because it's a natural continuation of their 300-year long history. It's clear why China proceeds along the lines that it's selected, because this is the continuation of their 3,000 year long history. So the marketplace, which are usually big corporations, right? They need rules, whatever they are, whatever formats they exist, and usually legal regulation supports current practice that the country exercises. The question is, the more interesting one, is who is going to win in this competitive race. I think that the US and China and Europe, Russia will all succeed. The question is who will win over the short run in this competitive race. To go back to this example with the red flags, machine building in the UK evolved eventually and is one of the strongest industries that the country has. And many people are saying that probably wouldn't have had World War I if Germany would not have excelled so much in machine building. Well, I'll approach this question from a different point of view. You claims that Chinese and American regulation are opposites to each other, but I think that both of these jurisdictions exercise a paternalistic approach to their manufacturers. China has unlimited budgets for anything. The United States are using non-financial mechanics of support. They are providing other means of support. So you may think that they are different approaches. In fact, I think there is more that they share more than they have in common than they are different. The United States aims at expansion and dominance in the global markets. Chinese manufacturers are targeting the domestic market mainly. Well, no, I mean, in terms of regulation and the logic of their development, obviously, for China, the main customer is the domestic customer, and then they would expand elsewhere. It's like the patents. First, they sucked in China from around the world, they implement it in China, and then they expand internationally.
So the question is probably how to adopt various regulations. It's difficult to analyze the Chinese legal framework because of their specifics, but the idea is basically the same. China sets huge entry barriers for foreign developers, including data availability. This is something that you mentioned, but both in US and China, national developers enjoy huge benefits, sometimes to the maximum extent possible. And this is something important that you should keep in mind. And, global nature of the internet is another thing to keep in mind. The Russian Internet Governance Forum mentions time and again that this is one of the reasons for the challenges that we face all the time. This is true for not just the Russian forum, but also for the global internet, the global IGF. What needs to be done in the globalized world, and I believe that the US and China are not an exception to the rule. I would support the previous panelists. Much depends on what benefits the industry is going to get when the law is passed. The adoption of this law should facilitate development of the AI development industry and should facilitate developments within the country, because Russian developers will be able, because of the law, develop better technologies, popular not just domestically, but also in the international market. From this is our standpoint. Ultimately, it's great that so much attention is paid by the national authorities to this very issue. If the industry gets so much attention, it develops faster, and that's my standpoint on the upcoming bill approval. Well, as far as the international experience is concerned, I would like to draw the following conclusion. No matter what the law says, the government will find a way to bypass it. For instance, one of the US laws says that you cannot use certain products uh, 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 to be integrated into homing devices, or for instance, you cannot build power plants next to cities. Nobody cares about that because the government authorities just bypass this law. They ignore the laws if it's more convenient for them. So no matter what we think, the authorities will still find a way to pursue their goals, even bypassing the laws. From the standpoint of incentives, I believe that the regulation per se can hardly incentivize development of emerging technologies because, economic factors, technological, and even culture-related uh, factors might have uh, a higher priority, while the legal experts usually respond to risks or their potential consequences, and they pass laws that might have an impact on the technology development. For instance, before the AI Act, the EU used to have the GDPR, which was also a unique piece of legislation because it tried to protect the users rather than ensure data availability for machine learning and AI model training. So it's a combination of the factors that have a higher impact than the standalone influence of regulation and legal framework. So I don't think that the legal framework has the priority here. Thank you. Well, an express call. A very simple question. Does Russia need a law on generative AI? And can we do better than copying and pasting similar acts from other countries? A short answer is no, we don't. I'm just joking. Before I take the question, you have to understand why. Well, the short answer is no if you phrase it like that. Karen, let's deal with the federal legal framework on AI. As for the generative AI, I don't think it deserves a standalone discussion. I'm not going to go against the ministry because I used to be a public official. Russia does need a law, but it should be flexible, it should be smart, and all the other adjectives that the business wants. As for the first question, the answer is no. And for the second question, can we not copy and paste it? I would say that if we are engaged in a proper dialogue, we might find solutions that have never existed before. Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Andrei. Well, this is a question that I could not answer when the students asked me this question after the AI session. So the question is as follows: what literature can be used for writing PhD thesis? What AI experts would approve as reference literature? Because students are afraid of using some sources that will result in getting a low grade from their professors. Are there any pieces of reference literature that you would recommend? Well, the Russian literature, for instance, by Tolstoy, incentivizes brains to critical thinking, for critical thinking. Well, even if you get a low grade, so what? I mean, this is a new domain, and objectively speaking, there are no benchmarks. It could be viewed as an advantage or a disadvantage. I don't know. I cannot recommend anything. AI is a unique domain, and the technology follows hand in hand with research. As far as Russia is concerned, there's just one internationally recognized AI scientist, Ivan Prezin, based in Skolkovo. And, frankly speaking, actually, if we're talking about legal regulation, there are a number of great books that have been published, but you have to be critical about them as well. As for foreign language sources, there are many of them, and well, as far as the internet governance is concerned, we have internationally recognized papers on internet governance, so it's easier to deal with that. As for AI, it's more complex. Lev Tolstoy is a great author, even if you specialize in AI, read it. Well, for school students, the AI Alliance, jointly with the Ministry of Education, already published a number of textbooks on AI. So basically, school students can use that. As for college students, there are multiple certified training programs approved by data scientists. And I would say that for college students, it would be useful to attend fora like the one we are attending today and listen to the advanced experts who talk a lot about cutting edge technology. So my recommendation to college students would be to attend events like this one. And data science departments is something that the Ministry of Digital Development promotes. Digital competencies are important. Literature gets obsolete, and various reference materials get obsolete. I totally agree that Lev Tolstoy and Pushkin are our heritage. However, what I'd like to add to that is the simplest way is to sign up for emails by OpenAI Tropics, and you learn the most recent news. You'll be right in the middle of the news. You'll be aware of what is happening, and you can use it for writing your PhD thesis. However, there is a risk that your professor is not going to be aware of all the recent news. So don't pay any attention to what professors say. I'm not trying to offend professors, but oftentimes they lag behind college students. Well, sign up for the Sapphire email list because it's a combined effort by us and our counterparts, and the intelligence reports are published all the time. Well, I have no idea what to recommend in terms of legal framework, but you can read the comments to the law on personal data protection to better understand how to deal with sensitive data in the first place. And then, well, it can also put you to sleep quite quickly. Well, my view on that is as follows. Computer translation is amazing, and the English language literature availability is great. And my advice would be to read the Anthropic Charter. It's a great example of a self-regulation paper, and the most advanced ideas are also embedded there. Thank you.